Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leaders Series, GCS Connect. We've got another CISO. We've been talking a lot on the cyber side for our GCS Cyber division in the last few weeks and months. And we've got Jim Newman, who's the newly installed CISO at Capco, who are a business that focus on digital transformation in the financial services industry. Great chat. We talk a lot about his background in recruitment and how he takes that towards building talent, building teams, but also how to look at security and start from fresh within that startup organization all the way through to a big organization and make sure that you've got the right structures, policies, and methodologies in place to make yourself secure. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hi, David. Yeah, very well this morning. Thanks.
Good, fantastic. Well, welcome to another episode of the Leaders Series. We've got Jim Newman, who's the CISO of Capco. He'll take us through a little bit more about the company that he works for. A new starter, I think, at Capco as well. But it's great to have Jim on board. We've talked quite a lot around cybersecurity and CISOs in the recent past, and I think it's great to have kind of someone at such a kind of forefront of sort of organisation that he is. So Jim, how are you doing today? You're working from home, I see. So
Yeah, working from home, enjoying
yeah,
the lovely British summer.
yeah,
Yeah, doing very well otherwise. Busy day, lots on.
sure.
Classic situation, as you can imagine. Lots of meetings, mostly remote, and very little time to finish the actions between the meetings.
There we go. Yeah, I know how you feel. So yeah. So you've recently joined Capco, but take us through a little bit about your role and the company itself, just so people can kind of understand where you're kind of coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, David. So Capco we're a global consultancy. Most of our clients are kind of banking, insurance, investment firms. So very much in the financial space, regulated industries. My role isn't consulting. It's not really client facing. It's the internal CISO role. So I run the team that are responsible for kind of managing, defining those security policies and security controls that we have at Capco. When I say it's not client facing, obviously our clients have some quite exacting standards, and so frequently there is a need to engage with clients. But mainly it's through due diligence and ensuring that we can meet the needs that they've got with the controls in place for the consultants working on their engagements. Like you say, I've only been at Capco now for just over 2 months, so it's still a voyage of discovery. And yeah, definitely an interesting one.
And I think that's one of the interesting things, isn't it? Now, is obviously you've kind of worked for quite a few years now in the finance side, with various different kind of organisations, which obviously we'll talk about, but that shows you how the information security kind of ladder in some ways and kind of supplier ladder goes down, doesn't it? Obviously, like you said, there's not client facing role, but obviously they're the customers that you work with are interested in your particular finance, because if you're linked into their systems, then they need to know that you're also kind of guarded, and that must kind of add to the complexities of these of this particular role, which we're seeing such a huge kind of growth and demand for within GCS.
Do you know, it's interesting you say that. For the last however many years, I've been working in product companies where actually we've been on the receiving end of the kind of pressures, because we were developing something and it was okay, what is our supply chain doing? Third party risk has become a hotter and hotter topic. Certainly you look at a lot of the breaches over the last 5 years, where actually we need to be really concerned about who are our suppliers, what are their security controls, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. Well, for the last how many years, I've been turning the screws on the people supplying to us, and right now at Capco, it's the first time in a while where it feels like actually most of that heat's coming our way. And our security controls and our maturity. The company's been running a long time, so the security controls are strong. We have a good posture and a lot of maturity, but it's a very different environment because I've been in those fintechs where we're building fresh, funky, crazy product in modern and interesting ways. And Capco is a very different company. We're working on client infrastructure. We're working within their environment, subject to their security controls. I'm not having to work out how we encrypt and secure a particular database that holds millions of people's credit card information. It's a different challenge, but it's partly that, and partly that, the pressures and the ways that people are looking to kind of make sure that we've got the right checks and balances. The scrutiny around that has changed a lot.
So when you come into these new organizations, have you got a particular methodology for how you kind of overcome the challenges? Because I noticed that in the last couple of organizations, you've obviously kind of come in to protect and put together these security platforms.
Yeah, so as you rightly alluded there, I've been to a couple of companies that were in that startup scale up space that that don't always work, and so sometimes, in an economic climate like this, they struggle. And going into those companies, they definitely have a very in it's not just a little bit chaotic and a lack of process and maturity. There's a real appetite for risk, because that's how they're kind of starting up and innovating. So going into those companies, the first thing that I've always done is, okay, what's the current state of affairs? What does our security look like? So it'll be an assessment. So it's a broad and very wide risk assessment, using things like, for example, the critical security controls, or the NIST cybersecurity framework as a basis, but not using it as a slavish, here's the tool, here's everything that we need to do. But actually, they've got a really good basis for what should good look like. So the first thing is assess the company and a bit of a gap analysis against those controls. And with that gap analysis, you're then able to talk about what are the ways in which security needs to grow and align with the business growth, and how do we make sure it's aligned with the business's risk appetite? Because everywhere has an appetite for risk. It's just, where's the comfort zone, and trying to get to that point with the business. And obviously, at that point, you're also having the discussion around budget. And when you're the first security hire in startup companies, that bit about budget is always the difficult one, because they have no idea what it's going to cost. But it's definitely costing a lot more than they had envisaged. They thought they could bring in one person, they would turn on a load of controls, and that would be it. And coming to Capco, where we had already a maturity of process, I've still followed a kind of similar methodology, which is, I need to know what the business is doing, what it's protecting, what are the crown jewels, what controls do we already have in place, where are the weaknesses, and then a path to kind of constantly and iteratively improve on where we are.
Yeah, it must be good that there's certain kind of rules that you've got that you can kind of and check through. And I noticed it was interesting what you said there about budget. And obviously, when people think about startups, thinking about how they kind of move forward with a business, and obviously the importance of cybersecurity. And you said there it's more expensive than people assume. I guess it would be important now to kind of, if you were about to go and set up a startup, you need to factor this cost in, because obviously everyone's going to ask for it. Is there like the cost of, having a invoice factoring, or I don't know, like you're having hiring a certain amount of programmers or an HR manager or something. I guess this is a cost you are definitely going to have.
So you're going to need to bear it at some point, and you can. It depends on how technical your founders are. Security is not just a technical discipline, but it depends on what your startup is, what are the things you're protecting, and that'll give you a, what is the expectation that your customers or your investors, what's the expectation they'll have in terms of security, and being able to meet those expectations. You can achieve, and you don't have to throw all your money at security tooling. Vendors will promise you the earth, and it's really easy to spend money in security. But when the budgets are tight, when companies are small and they've only got a certain amount of limited funding, you've got to stretch it and make it go as far as you can. I've run small businesses myself. I know that your eye on your cash flow is critical. So if you're starting out, it's getting the advice of somebody. Even you don't need a CISO when you're starting your company, but you do need somebody who's got got the right mindset is able to identify these are some simple things that we need to make sure we're doing to protect the data as we're growing. Those real early startup stages, the people in your company are heavily invested in making sure that everything's a success. But as you grow, the people that you hire are less invested in your company. It's less tight, and so things get looser as you grow. And you just want to make sure you get the basics in early, rather than needing to change a lot of things afterwards. It's that rework. And if you're an IT company that's building product, you've got to get it right early on, because the last thing you want is to launch the product and find that it gets breached later.
And that's where things like DevSecOps come in. So you're kind
Yeah.
of constantly developing in a kind of secure fashion, aren't you? Kind of with
Well,
the
and
eye on that all the time.
for years we talked about shift left, get security in as early as possible. Yeah, absolutely right. Engage with security threat model before you start designing something, so that you can say what might go wrong and what are the security requirements we bake into it. But it's not just shift left; it's shift everywhere. We need to get that in at the start, but you then need the whole process and pipeline to have security throughout. And you do want to run penetration tests. They might just be viewed as, well, it's a line in the sand stage gate, but it's the opportunity to really hammer the product and make sure that what you've got is as robust as it can be.
So I guess there's two points there. So I guess like nowadays, like having a CISO is a bit like it's like a badge of honor. If you got to the size of having a CISO, then you're one stage closer to being a global giant. But going back to what you kind of said there with regards to making sure you do the simple things, and there's certain things you should do. What would you advise kind of for startups? Like, you need to make sure you've got these things sorted. This is the best way to start.
The first thing is know what you've got, know what you're protecting. So it's not very glamorous. People often talk about, oh yeah, people need to get the basics right, and we say it with such confidence that it makes it sound like the basics are easy. The basics aren't actually as easy as they might seem. But know what you're protecting. So asset registers, what are the devices, what data have we got, where is it? And then once you know what those things are, what are the controls we've got around it right now? What are the regulations that we're facing? And the questions that always kind of we come up against are identity and access. It's not just what is the data and what are the systems. Who's got access to it? What users have got access to be able to change it, or to be able to introduce other things that shouldn't be there. And the same thing applies with all of your systems. Why does everybody need to be a local administrator on their laptop? How often are they actually needing that kind of control? And why do you need 20 people having admin access to your Office 365? And in small and growing companies, one of the things that I see every single time is people who are admin on particular SaaS platforms, for example. So they're configuring things, they're logging in, they're making changes. A lot of the time, they're not necessarily technical. They don't have a technical background. They've never been a sysadmin before, but suddenly you've got the founder or the financial director is running a platform and has configured it in a way, or they've got a customer who said, oh, we'd like you to federate your tenant with us and give us this access. And suddenly they're kind of creating these gaping holes in their network and letting somebody in. It's akin to having a fortress, but you've just dug a tunnel to the robber's lair next door because one of them was wearing a suit.
Yeah. And you talk about, I guess, like one of the things we talk about on the security side is getting kind of buy-in. It's obviously, like you said, it's not the most exciting thing, but it's one of the most important things. So again, when you come in and maybe it's a new thing, and maybe they've been told by the investors they need to do it, how do you get that kind of buy-in? How do you make sure that people kind of understand the importance of it?
I haven't cracked it yet,
Yeah.
so I'll tell you when I find out. No, genuinely, having taken roles in really small companies where I was the only security hire, or where it was me growing a team of 2 or 3, where you really need to impress upon people the importance of security, you cannot do it with fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because you're just screaming into the void. You have to be realistic and pragmatic. You have to choose the hill you're willing to die on, and you have to be able to demonstrate, like,
So
you know,
sorry. So Jim,
beyond.
when you say that fear, because I would always be like, if we do this, then the hackers will get in and steal all our data, and we're going to lose millions. Are you saying that's probably not because it's, although it's likely, it's unlikely. It's not
It,
helpful.
it's not a helpful way of addressing it, because let's say you're a savvy business professional and
yeah,
somebody comes along and says to you, we could get hacked. Look, here's a story of somebody getting hacked. The response is, we haven't been hacked yet.
yeah,
Show
yeah.
show me
I've never
show me
been
where your
hacked. Yeah,
last
yeah, no,
incident
yeah,
was that was related to this.
yeah,
Because the whole fear, uncertainty, and doubt thing, like, there are loads of breaches. There's attacks all the time. Our systems are constantly being probed and under attack. And I harken back to, I spent 5 years not working in technology. I worked in road safety. I did collision investigation, root cause analysis. I specialized in motorcyclists, in how do we prevent motorcyclists from dying. And you talk to motorcyclists and you say to them, here are the things that cause crashes. You can't do fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Every motorcyclist knows the risk inherent when they're riding their bike. They know if they come off their bike, it's going to hurt or worse. And so you can't go and say to them, you could have a crash and you might die, because they know that. So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but
The
these are
chances
risks
are
they're
one
willing
to
to
two
take. What
percent.
you have,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So what you have to do is talk to them about, well, here are some things you can do that make it less likely,
right,
because
okay,
here are some problems that happen, and here are some things you can do. And
yeah.
I view what we do in security in a very similar manner, which is, okay, what are the battles that we need to win?
Mm.
How do we demonstrate that it's not fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that it's the right thing to do?
There's
Usually,
always there's
depending,
always a chance that this may happen.
yeah,
But at the moment, the way we're working, or the way you're driving your motorbike, it means that there's a 10% chance that you're going to die,
yeah,
right? If you do these things, like drive within the speed limit, drive on the left-hand side of the road, wear a crash helmet, then there's a chance you're going to die as 0.5%, which is
yeah,
much better, right? Do you like those odds? I
yeah,
guess
and
that's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
and I've not looked at it in those terms, but your motorcycle helmet, your leathers, airbag
Mm.
jackets,
Yeah.
these are the resilience in your system. It's the,
Mm.
okay, so if our system goes down, we've got backups, we've got recovery. Okay, we've had this short-term pain, but we can recover from it quite easily. And it's trying to get the business to the point where it actually is agreeing that there are the right steps. Sometimes, and it depends who you deal with. Sometimes we, I don't believe in Department of No, because it doesn't work. We're dealing with human beings. Nobody likes being told no, and generally people will find a way around it. I find myself in security because I'm a mischief maker by that's just who I am, and how I see things. It's not that I'm a rule breaker, but I will look for okay, what's the way around the thing. So there's no point in imposing rules where somebody can circumvent it, because they'll just avoid you. It's much better to have people being open and honest and helping them to secure what they're trying to do. And by looking for those quick wins and finding ways of achieving what somebody wants to do in a secure way, that's the way that I get buy-in with other stakeholders. And occasionally you have to pull out the regulation says we have to do it. I hate
Yeah, yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
I hate doing that. Oh, I'm sorry, mate. I'd love
Yeah,
to
the
help you, but the
FSA say,
regulators
no,
tell
yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah. And I guess in the financial services, it's a particular kind of key one, isn't it? Because you really, like, if you lose your licenses or something like that, then that's going to be, catastrophic for the business, right? It's not just a kind of a nice to have; it's a they say we must have.
It's mandated. You can't get around it. Um,
Said that a few times, Jim. The way you just said that,
yeah, I'd love to help you. I'd
the
love to help you,
shrug.
but the thing is, if you've got that, and if you have to do that, you then find the other bits that feel like a compromise. And it's not that you're compromising on your security. What you're looking for is, okay, we've got to do this thing, but here is something else we can do that's going to streamline it or automate it or remove some of that pain. Like, security systems cost money, they slow things down. Like our processes, we can't help it. It is just inherent to. So we just want to reduce the friction as much as we possibly can. You can't do it without friction,
But I
but you can
think
reduce it.
when you talk about IAMs and like the investment you do, I do think that security product companies are definitely pushing the boundary in terms of like the ease of use. They're thinking more
Yep.
about user accessibility with things like Face ID,
Yep.
2FA as much, but we use like MS Authenticator, which to me is like a really, oh,
Brilliant.
that's really clever the way it does that. It's just like,
Yeah.
this is changing, this is life changing, it's
Honest,
kind of,
honestly,
we don't,
the password is such a hang up from the olden days, and
yeah,
using kind of if you've got your systems, if you've got to the stage where you can run with full passwordless
yeah,
authentication, like this is what we need to be doing, because
yeah,
I forgot my password. Well, you don't have a password, so you
yeah,
can't have forgotten it.
yeah.
Can you reset my password? I mean, it saves IT teams.
There's probably like 90% of the things they ask. I'm locked out because I forgot my password.
And when somebody sends you a phishing email and there's a login page and it says log in with your username and password, and you're like, well, hang on, like I don't have a password and nothing's coming up on my
That's right. Yeah,
authenticator. Well,
yeah.
boom, there you go. You
It's
know
not. It's not
immediately,
you.
even if you
Yeah.
fell for the initial kind of like, hang on a second, yeah, I don't have a password.
Yeah,
I can't give you my
there we go.
password.
Exactly. So we've broken the code. We've broken the code. So as you kind of like look forward for the next year, what are your main priorities? I think one of the great things and interesting things about cyber is it's constantly progressing. Right, it's a
Yeah.
constant like battle between the good guys and the bad guys. The way I see it. So what are you prioritizing? One in your new role, but secondly, like as a CISO.
Oh God, yeah. The having come here, we've only within the last couple of weeks, I've set out and had agreed what our goals are and what our targets, the things that we want to address, and they're pretty common themes, improving our cloud security posture, include genuinely trying to generate a culture of security. Capco, the staff are really good. That actually the understanding of the need for security is very good, and we just need to build on that and start getting a lot of that kind of embedded into secure behaviors. So those are a couple of the pillars that we've got. We have that constant challenge of how do we handle and how do we address the kind of volume of work that comes our way, because like everybody else, it's we need to be doing more with less. So and the volume of third party requests that come our way is quite significant. So trying to find ways of automating and improving. But one of the biggest things for me at Capco is demonstrating the value of what we do, and we need really solid metrics to do that. At the moment, we're building a program of kind of actually showing what security is doing and where the benefits are from what security is doing, because at the moment that's something which hasn't been done very effectively so far. The reporting that's in place is solid. It gives people what they need, but it doesn't really. I'm going to sound like a salesman, but it doesn't tell the story. It doesn't tell the story of what security is doing and where it's helping. It also doesn't tell the story of what we shouldn't be focusing on, the things that we shouldn't do in order to focus on the bigger priorities.
Yeah, it's always one of those things, obviously, that should be just rolling along in the background and no one really thinks about, right?
Yeah,
That's basically like payroll or whatever. No one ever wants to speak to payroll because you just got paid normally, didn't you? That's
yeah.
how it should be. No one ever speaks to the cybersecurity team because I never get hacked, so it's all
The
good.
number of times that I end up on a call where I say I'd rather be meeting you in more pleasant
Yeah,
circumstances
yeah,
is
that's right. Yeah,
is far
far
it's
more than you'd
yeah,
like. Yeah, and what we've, I mean, we're recording this in July. It's Wimbledon and Ashes time, and that sort of thing. So a bit disappointed with the rain, but from my side, we've got one of our GCS Connect Cyber events kind of come out, which is AI in cybersecurity. We've got
yep,
some interesting people. You just mentioned there with regards to you know the amount of tasks that are coming through, and this is one of the reasons why we at GCS see this as as an interesting and growth market. Really, is because obviously the scale of threat is exponential, particularly when
yeah.
you look at AI. So, from your side, one, do you see that? Do you see this as becoming, if you automate threats, that becomes exponentially worse? But then I guess you also have and if we automate defenses, that makes us stronger. So, is that
So
something that you're seeing or thinking about?
we've been, to be honest, we've been seeing it for years that that actually because of the number of events, the volumes of traffic going through companies, and like I say, working in product companies where it was significant volumes of traffic, and working in product companies, certainly in some of those financial services where they were under significant and sustained attack, that you need to be building on and using services that are giving you machine learning and some AI integration, because that's the only way that you can scale to meet kind of the volume of what's hitting you. But it also works with internal, that we need to be doing user behavior and analytics, and you can only do that through those machine learning models and being able to kind of track and identify where there are risky cases. So we've been doing it for years with the products that we do use. It's not something, going back to that, you can't build it on the cheap yourself, but you can buy products off the shelf that are using a lot of AI and machine learning to support what they do and to scale. The other side of it, though, is we've recently written our company policy on the use of Gen AI, so using ChatGPT and things like that within the business, because obviously those kind of large language learning models are extremely effective at doing a lot of things, and so people are very curious about how they can either use it to improve their work or to do other things, and there are then risks inherent to that. At the same time, we look at kind of all these requests coming in saying, hey, we need you to fill in this due diligence questionnaire, and you can't help but look at it and think, we could probably use some of these tools to help us, because they can be trained on our documents, and they can fill this in, send it back, and it'll give us the time back in our calendars, and then we'll just get on a call with the vendor. So
Exactly.
I think
And they could use their own chatbot to read the
uh,
responses and then tell
yeah,
tell
and
tell
then
the
come
person
back
that
to our
sent
chatbot
it.
with the follow on, and then we'll put them both on a Zoom call um, and watch the ashes, like you say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But I think automation has has been a constant kind of digital transformation issue within
Yeah.
our lives. But
Mm.
you look at the volumes of things that we need to deal with. We have to lean into it heavily. You can't solve the problem by throwing human beings at it. We need improved systems. We need the ability to scale, and that's the only way that you can do it. And that obviously people who are carrying out attacks are using not just the new kind of large language models, but they've been using automation to probe and push. It's how they're able to gain a foothold in so many places
Yeah.
so rapidly.
It's an ongoing thing. And then, so kind of coming on from that, obviously we talk about automation there, but I know obviously, just for those who are kind of looking through your LinkedIn background, you come from a recruitment background. So I guess you always look at this with a kind of a talent or a person based kind of element of this. So, you know, again, as you come in and you're building these teams and you're thinking about this in a very, very competitive market, right? There's not enough people that can do these jobs. Okay. Um, what do you see as your talent strategy? And with taking aside the AI, as you look to kind of build your teams, what types of people are you looking for? How do you make sure you don't lose out to competitors in a very competitive market? You know, Obviously this is a real struggle for all kind of CISOs, I think.
think, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I've come to Capco and inherited a team. So the team's already in place. But
Thank
the
God.
last team I built from the ground up was, well, no,
Yeah.
it's great. We've already got people.
Yeah.
But the last team that I built from the ground up was while I was at KidsLoop, and so we built a team of 12 within just over a year, and it it was very much okay. Everybody talks about the cyber skills shortages, so you just have to be intelligent in what you go looking for. Yes, there are some very technical roles in security where you need very technical, deep people who are able to do those roles, but that's not all of the roles in security. And you can get people with the right skill sets, and you just need to be, I was going to say, think outside the box. It doesn't matter how hackneyed it sounds. You've got to be looking at, okay, what are the things that I need within this particular role, and where can I find candidates who have that? So the team we built at KidsLoop were a team that we recruited on the basis of attitude and aptitude. We wanted people who got the mission, were, were ready to get stuck in, and wanted to kind of learn and grow. So even if they didn't have all of the skill sets, we took some people who'd worked in security before for obvious reasons, but we also had people who had been sysadmins, so they were security adjacent, had a really good security mindset, and were like, oh, I've never done any security work before. Well, you have. You've been securing systems for years. You just haven't thought of it that way. And actually, you've also been supporting with incident response when your systems have been under attack. You haven't thought of it that way. And we recruited somebody to be our security culture and awareness person, who was she was a therapist. So she did counselling. That was her thing, and she was looking to move out of it. And we said, well, we don't need you to know security. We need you to change
Go
people's
to talk to
behaviour.
people. Yeah. Yeah.
You need to understand how to shift behaviors
Mm,
and do those nudges, and you know that better than any of us, and we can
mm,
teach you the security things. And you not being super technical and wanting to learn that is a good thing, because you are much more aligned with most of the people that we deal with in our
mm.
business, and we're not, because we're going, like, I don't understand why this person has struggled with this concept. And by having Vessi on board, it was really easy, because she was able to say, I don't get it either. So she could then communicate in terms that work. So it's just looking and trying to identify. You don't fish from the same small pool, right? I guess that's the recruitment angle of it. When I started a recruitment agency, it was while I was leaving teaching, and there were not, like right now, there were not many teachers. So you had to be intelligent and kind of, right, what's the creative way for us to find the right people who is not already looking for someone in this particular category. So yeah, I think it's that. And then, you know we we had a very strong kind of methodology. We would recruit for people who saw themselves as lifeguards rather than policemen. So we're looking for people who are there to make it a safe place to be, but it's not about I am the law.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, and I guess like your background as a kind of leader as well, and like you're looking at people who come from different areas. I mean, looking again through your background, you've kind of taken that journey, haven't you? You've come into cybersecurity. There's not kind of what you did your degree in or anything like
Yeah,
that. It's obviously something that interested you, and you became more and more involved with it from an IT background. But I think that's one of the things that as recruiters sometimes that we struggle with in terms of you get a job spec, the client wants you to tick every single box in the job spec, so you only look for a certain type of person, so you put a certain type of person down, and you generally don't think outside the box because you don't feel that's your job. That's not what you're getting
yeah,
paid for, right? But I think if we were to do that more, that would probably help with the skill shortages that we've got. And it's kind of a supplier and customer sort of decision, isn't it?
yeah. And actually, that's a really good point. We had somebody put a candidate in front of me years ago. This was as a developer, and he'd applied for an apprenticeship that we had going, and he wasn't eligible. And so, but the recruiter said, "Hey, we think you should meet this guy. He's really good. We think he might fit if you've got another job that you could give him." And I met this chap, and he he didn't have a background in programming. He was working on the cheese counter in a supermarket, but he was learning to program in his spare time. And there was just all these things about him that were kind of like, okay, well, look, we'll give you a pump, we'll give you a trial. And he was fantastic. And he was throwing all his time and effort into learning
To
and
that growth,
developing
yeah.
his own skill set.
Mm,
Um, and it was just purely that the recruiter had said, do you know, I think this guy might fit for you. He doesn't
mm,
tick any of the boxes for the thing you're recruiting for right now, but I think you should meet him. And
yeah.
yeah, he turned out to be an absolute star.
Fantastic. And on that happy note, recruiters being helpful, I think is a great way for us to kind of bring this to a close. Jim, it's been really interesting to kind of understand a little bit more about your kind of role and how kind of well we can really kind of build these things without doing exactly spending all the money and hiring all the top level people, if you know what I mean. And I think that seems to be something that I take from this, and that what you're saying is that you can construct a really, really strong basis for security culture without spending the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, because security people can be really expensive. But actually, at the same time, if you're bringing somebody from a security adjacent background into security, they need not be super expensive. And actually, they're coming in with a lot of experience and a lot of background with the sort of technologies that you'd expect. And yeah, there's they're not coming in as, hey, here's my lead kind of malware detection engineer necessarily, but it because there's going to have to be this kind of period of growth, but it doesn't mean you have to, yeah, doesn't mean you have to break the bank.
Fantastic. Jim, thanks very much for your time today. Enjoy your day, and I'll speak to you soon.